People didn't know how long it was gonna be before they released the next iteration of cameras. I've tried to switch a couple of times. I tried to switch and go to Canon, came back. Tried to go to Blackmagic, came back. Tried to go to Sony with the A7S3, came back. And I was like, well, darn, I want to stick with Lumix. I want to see what they have because I know when Lumix does release a camera, they're heavy hitters.
Lately, it seems like every Lumix camera has been causing massive waves of attention on the internet. Some good and some bad. Well, in today's episode, we are going to be having a special guest specifically talking about the rise and fall of the Lumix gang, from being a huge Lumix fan to jumping ships to a different camera brand for multiple different reasons. But without further ado, introducing our guest, Jerimiah Cook, aka Big Cook. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, Matthew? How you doing?
I'm doing so good. Just to give my audience a little bit of context, who are you? What do you do? And just kind of a little bit more behind the scenes, revealing the curtain of just who is Big Cook on the internet and then professionally speaking as well.
Well, Big Cook is the voice of the comment section on the internet because you know how the comment sections get when it comes to these cameras. So Big Cook speak about cameras and filmmaking like the comment section basically. And professionally, I do a lot of events, festivals, and stuff like that. But this fall, I'll be getting into more sports.
Sports, are you into sport photography or filmmaking?
Both. It'll be both.
And what sports is that?
Football. I got a contract with CMS, which is the high schools around here in my area.
Dang,
to
that's cool.
Shoot video and photography for them.
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of curious. You've been a Lumix shooter pre-phase detect autofocus, correct?
Yes.
So a couple warm-up questions I like getting my guests started on this is, what was that first Lumix camera and then being introduced to the brand itself?
The first Lumix camera that I got introduced to was the Lumix G7, which was the camera that a lot of Lumix content creators got introduced with.
Yeah. And then, well, what was that introduction to the brand? Did you find them on YouTube? Did you search them out? Did someone recommend them? Or what was that progress of, like, did you start on the G7 and continue on to the GH5 and different cameras like that?
Yeah, I started with the G7 because it was the most budget-friendly camera that shot 4K. Because I had a friend that had an A7S2 and he was telling me about cameras and stuff. And he wanted me to hold his camera, but I was like, nah, I don't want to mess with that camera because it costs a lot of money and I don't want anything to happen to it. So I started looking on the internet for different cameras and I ran across the Lumix G7 and, it was over since then.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a powerhouse of a camera. Like, I shot on the GH7. I know multiple other people and friends of mine also started on the GH7. Now I'm curious, kind of flash forwarding, enter the phase detect era. You got the S5 II, did you have the S5 IIX as well or just the S5 II?
No.
Just the S5 II. You recently switched cameras though. What is your current go-to camera setup looking like right now?
Well, right now I'm shooting with the Nikon Z8 with the Tamron 28-75. And in the fall for football season, I'll be getting a 70-200 f2.8 Nikon. That's pretty much my go-to setup for my professional work. Now,
what was the cause, and you can go as deep as you want into this, what was the cause for making that switch to the Nikon system from Lumix?
The cause for making the switch was because, for one, and I love Lumix, but when it came to the marketing side of things, they were airtight. People didn't know how long it was going to be before they released the next iteration of cameras. Then on top of that, I knew that I needed a camera with speed for sports. And I'm waiting, and I've had now 3 full-frame Lumix cameras. I had the S1 when it first came out. I had the S5, the S5 II, and now I also have a G9, so that's four full-frame cameras. But it was just waiting and not hearing anything for so long, and I was like, well, darn, I want to stick with Lumix. I want to see what they have because I know when Lumix does release a camera, they're heavy hitters. But, all of the waiting, I kind of ran out of patience, which happened to be a month before the S1 Mark II got released.
Yeah. And what was that reaction of? I know you said in your videos that you didn't feel like you had any remorse towards the S1R Mark II when that came out. You weren't feeling kind of that gear acquisition syndrome or gas. What were your thoughts when that S1R Mark II came out? And then you are just sold everything too, like literally a month before.
To be honest, when I started looking at the rumors, and it was like, it's a Z8 killer, it's a A1 killer, R5 Mark II killer, it's supposed to be super fast, 40 frames a second. I was like, oh my God, is Lumix releasing the camera that I wanted, a fast action sports camera? And so when I first saw the rumors, I was kind of nervous and I had a little bit of remorse. But then when it got released and I saw, okay, well, it's not really a fast action camera like the rumors were saying, then I was like, okay, well, I did make a good decision for what I'm doing on the business end.
And were you the original, from my perspective, you were the one who coined the Lumix slang. You had a whole intro music, you had the slogan, you kind of made this community around the Lumix gain. I know, and then like 2 weeks ago you posted your video about getting the S9, so getting another Lumix camera. What was everyone's reaction on your channel when you left the Lumix ecosystem and then coming back to the Lumix ecosystem with the S9?
Well, everyone that subscribed to my page or were followers of my page, they had come to know me as a person. So when I did switch, they stayed just for the content. But when I got the S9 and let it be known, yeah, they were happy, especially to hear the old intro, to hear me talking about Lumix cameras. And to be honest, when I wanted to get a B cam or everyday carry camera, I was looking at Nikon cameras because I was in the ecosystem. But it's just something about Lumix cameras that when it comes to content creation and filmmaking, even though the Z8 is a powerhouse camera, it's just something about Lumix cameras that sit above any other camera that I've used. Because if you didn't know, I've tried to switch a couple of times. I tried to switch and go to Canon, came back. Tried to go to Blackmagic, came back. Tried to go to Sony with the A7S3, came back. Now, I got a Nikon Z8 and I'm going to keep it for what it is professionally, but for everyday use and content creation, I got to have a Lumix camera. Like,
yeah,
that Lumix magic.
It's definitely a thing. I feel like the moment you start shooting on a Lumix camera, you start realizing how much, like, the color, the richness, the features, the value for money that Lumix cameras bring. It makes me interested. What specifically did you miss from Lumix when you switched over to Nikon? And I also know people were commenting on your channel like, we'll give Big Cook a year. He'll get that Nikon out of his system.
Yeah.
I did see those comments. What made you miss from, like, what settings, features, or just in general, what did you miss from Lumix when you switched over to the Nikon ecosystem?
The first thing that I missed was the stabilization. Because, Nikon stabilization, it's okay, but with Lumix stabilization, you can leave a gimbal at home a lot, unless you really, really need it. And when I got the S9 and I was filming with my friend that came up from Florida, that was the first thing that I was like, whoa, because I was walking behind him as he was walking and it was just floating. And I was like, man, this Lumix is something else. And it was that. I don't really miss OpenGate because I didn't use it like that, even when I had Lumix cameras. I didn't shoot anamorphic. I'm not really doing things for social media as far as vertical video. So it wasn't that. But also another thing that I missed was the focus transition feature. That was a big feature because I'm doing a lot of filming by myself and I like to have the image rack focus. And so when you use the focus transition feature, that's a godsend. And just plus, I know how to work with Lumix footage. But like the Nikon, like I say, it's a technical masterpiece. But when it comes to shooting video, it just lacks that Lumix usability.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I feel like There's so much that Lumix brings to the table, and especially now with the S1R Mark II, there's even more. I've been doing extensive testing before our call today on the S1R Mark II for overheating, and like I was able to get 8K and not have it overheat, which is a whole nother video that'll come out on my channel. But I also was able to get it to overheat in 12 minutes. So it's on both sides at the same time. Since we kind of talked about some of the things you missed and some of the things that you liked more specifically on the Lumix ecosystem, I'd love to definitely give some credit as well. What are some advantages you see over the Nikon, especially the Z8, over Lumix?
Well, first, the photography experience, just the whole experience of shooting photos. Like you can tell that Nikon has been a photography companies for over 100 years. With, just the handling of the camera, the images of the pictures, just the photography experience is top notch. Then, the 12-bit internal RAW. That's a great feature because like Lumix has it in the S1R, but I edit in DaVinci, so I can't use the ProRes RAW in DaVinci. The Nikon Z8 has ProRes RAW and it has Nikon RAW. And you can edit the Nikon RAW in DaVinci. So that's a great feature to have because it just saved me on a shoot that I did for a tattoo festival because the lighting was mixed and I was, running all around. And then some of the lighting was cool inside the venue. Some of the lighting was more tungsten. And, shooting in RAW, I didn't really have to worry about it as much as if I was shooting in 10-bit. So the photography and probably the internal RAW, the 8K is okay. But, I'm not really shooting too much in it unless I want to shoot to reframe or to get I can film and then zoom in to kind of like a macro, kind of like a macro image. But that's pretty much the two main things, the photos and the RAW.
Yeah. And slightly shifting gears a little bit, since you purchased the Nikon Z8 a month or so before the S1R Mark II, I have two questions before then we get into the last and final question for today's podcast episode. If you were able to go back in time, you knew the S1R Mark II was coming out. Would you have waited for the S1R Mark II or just still make that decision of, all right, sell all my Lumix cameras and pick up the Nikon Z8?
No, I would have I would have waited for the S1R Mark II and I would have made it work because like I say, I love Lumix cameras. Like it wasn't like I was like, oh yes, I'm going to go forget Lumix. Like I love Lumix. I love all of the people that I've met since I've been on social media, talking about Lumix. And I know that Lumix makes great cameras. So I would have got the S1R Mark II and worked with it instead of getting rid of everything because, I had S Pro lenses and everything for Lumix, 24 to 70, S Pro 70 to 200. Then, the primes. So, it wasn't just like I was, just coming off of a camera and a lens. I had a lot invested into the Lumix system. So it was bittersweet. And even now it's kind of bittersweet because I know like I told a guy, because I was just on a Nikon podcast, and he asked me about Nikon versus Lumix, and I told him, I say, the Z8 to me would be a better professional camera for what I do than the S1R2. But the S1R2 would be a camera that I would use just a lot more than the Z8. Because it's a great content creation camera that you can get professional stuff done with. So, who knows what the future will hold, but I'm always keep my eye out. I'm looking at the rumors, seeing what's going on. And, who knows?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we'll touch point on, I am curious to hear something that I'll ask towards the end of the episode. But I guess to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that and open that question up a little bit more, if you had to recommend someone to pick up the Lumix S1R Mark II or the Nikon Z8, who are you recommending to what ecosystem and why?
If someone is shooting sports or maybe like wildlife, anything that's fast paced, I would say, and you're going to be behind the camera all of the time or most of the time, I would say get the Z8. Anything else, I would go with the S1R Mark II, because I know the Lumix cameras are easy to use, but you can go in depth, past most other camera brands, if not all mirrorless camera brands, when it comes to tools and assist features, So the S1R Mark II would be good for anybody that's, kind of a beginner all the way up to a professional. The Z8, especially with me coming from Lumix, it had a lot of quirks and a lot of things that I had to learn to get it to function how I wanted to function. So I would say for sports, wildlife, anything that's fast paced, which you could still get away with it with the S1R2, but the Z8 was designed specifically for that. So I would say the Z8 on that. Anything else, content creation, professional video jobs, things that, might not require super high burst rates, I would say get the S1R Mark II, because you're going to get a great camera with a great image and a camera that can last you for a long time.
Awesome. So before we kind of land the plane and get into this last and final question, which will have a lot more technical details, where can people check you out?
Oh, well, you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube at Big Cook Digital.
Sick. I know we didn't get like a pound gain Lumix in the game in the comments from you yet.
Yeah, man. If y'all rocking with Big Cook, go ahead and drop that pound gang in the comment section. Show me some love. And if you Lumix gang, y'all know what it is, man. It's always love, no matter where I'm at.
Dude, that's so sick. So last question, what camera from Lumix do you want to see them produce in the future? What would that camera be called? What would that camera look like in your mind? What specs would it have? Kind of the questions of what's bringing Big Cook back to Lumix ecosystem. What does that camera look like to you? And I am not cut up on any rumor site, so I have no idea what's going on. From a creator's perspective, we don't know when what a camera is until like a week before launch sometimes.
Okay. If you can, let's see. I would say 2 cameras could bring me back. If they could make a camera like the Nikon Z8, like with a fast sensor, I jump back to Lumix in a heartbeat, because I know Lumix in and out. Or if they made an FX3 style Lumix camera, because one thing that I've learned with shooting with this S9 is it's something about shooting with cameras without the viewfinder. When it comes to video, it just makes it a better experience. So if they could release something like an FX3 style camera with the Lumix bells and whistles and that Lumix magic, oh yeah, I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah. No, I really would love to see, like you said, an FX3, but I also like a box style Blackmagic Pixis competitor, because like I've been shooting on the Pixis a little bit lately, but there's just like nothing. It's like like you said, the Lumix magic is just something else. Like the image out of it, I would definitely love to see if Lumix created like their own type of RAW so they can work in DaVinci similar to that.
That Lumix they got RAW. They got something called Very Pure that they used to have in their Very Cam cameras.
See?
So,
I'm
they
too
have
young
a
to know
RAW.
this stuff.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. But yeah, they have a RAW. And I hope they do release a cinema camera, because that was one of my gripes too, because I didn't see the upgrade path past, the mirrorless cameras, where everybody else, they have the mirrorless cameras and you can go into the cinema portions of their company. But to be honest, every time I had a cinema camera, I didn't like it. Blackmagic cameras, I didn't really like it. I had a Z Cam. I didn't really like it. I'm more of a mirrorless hybrid shooter, and I'm just coming to terms with that. That's how I like the filming.
I mean, I really like the form factor of the Blackmagic Pixis. My only gripe with it, besides not having face detect autofocus or any continuous autofocus whatsoever, having no IBIS is definitely like, I'm like, oh, it's like,
yeah,
it's like you said, you literally can leave a gimbal at home. I think the ecosystem that Lumix can really hone and own, especially if they do make a more of a cinema camera, is in that box camera design, but still having more geared towards not content creators, but more small production teams with like 3 to 5 people max on those teams. And then if they're able to license, RE log or ARRI log, C4 or C3, and then from there, your last upgrade path, if you want a more professional cinema cameras, then you're just going to be going to an RE camera at that point, like 25K. And you're like, but besides that, once they get that stuff in, I'm set. I mean, with the S1R Mark II, I'm pretty set. Like, I don't need anything else. S5 2X, I was pretty set. I just wanted full frame 60.
Yeah, and the S1R Mark II, man, one thing I want to say is this too, man. And Lumix cameras with the S9, the same with the GH5, and as far as I can remember, which was one of the reasons why I started Lumix Gang. Lumix cameras catch a lot of flack on YouTube, and it's like no matter how good of a camera they put out, it catches a lot of flack, while other companies that shall not be named can put out a dud, but it still get put up on a pedestal. You get what I'm saying? So I just always dislike that, because how you gonna tell me that my camera is trash that I paid all this money for just because you don't like it? So that, like I say, that's why I started Lumix Gang, because I wanted to speak from the comment section to the people, So if Lumix puts out, a great video camera this year, whether it's the S1H Mark II or some other video camera that's a powerhouse, which is their DNA, and they get the marketing side, because they have a lot of great creators like you guys who, can tell you everything about Lumix cameras in and out. But I think that they should just get people that just use the cameras. You see what I'm saying? Like, just use them and just show them like out in the field and, creating stuff with the cameras without really having to talk about them so much. And that'll draw a lot of people in, because that's what I noticed with, Sony and other brands. You can look up whatever camera and you're going to see, Morocco A7S3 video or, wherever, some foreign destination. And that's what brings a lot of creators in, talking about it. Once they get in and they want to learn, then you guys are coming to play a lot more. Okay, well, let me see what these Lumix cameras are about. Then you guys can give them the rundown with the specs and everything else. But hopefully, they have that, and a lot of creators pick up the S1R Mark II, and Lumix claims its rightful place as one of the powerhouses.
Sick. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me on today's episode, Big Cook.
Oh, yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
And if you guys want to check out another episode where I'm talking about the S1R Mark II versus the S1H and S1R, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Till the next one, guys. Peace.